Today we're gonna we're discussing. Welcome everyone to the book club meeting two of the Delectable Negro. Um, Sarah, do you want to share anything from chapter one that you want to talk about? Because chapter one is actually the whole intro in chapter one is really intense. So if you want to talk about anything from that chapter, we're all ears. I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. I mean, overall, I think this is just probably one of the most disturbing texts I've read in recent memory, and I specifically wanted to join this book club because I feel like this wasn't on the radar of most people who are trying to really chew into this type of politics right now. And so I think I don't know. I just, knowing that the author themselves was a genderqueer Black person and this was their life's work and they were constantly thinking about this is just, I don't know, just so I don't know the right word. I feel exhausted reading this for an hour and I'm not Black, and then just this person studied this, read this, and when they're talking in the introduction about all the lengths that Woodard went to just really bring this to light and make sure this was known, I'm just very grateful that it exists. But yeah, honestly, yeah, it's a lot. I'm sure.
Anything in particular from chapter one that you want to talk about, or you can you personally remember?
Let me look at what I highlighted. Oh, I thought there's when they're talking about in the romancing the cannibal section, which is on page 34, and I think is kind of when they're talking about this quote unquote romantic dynamic between Aquino and Richard. I don't know if I'm mixing up different things, but I think that was such a I mean, I feel like that trope of white saviorism through this queer lens is I mean, we can almost see that today with how many times that I feel in mainstream queer just media, it's oh well, this white person will take you in and take care of you and you'll be safe with them, when really it's just this incredible violence you're being subjected to and being dehumanized. And so that, I mean, that was just something off the top of my head. I was just oh my god, fuck, this is gonna be a lot, because the person, and his friend, he's I mean, he thinks well of the guy. He's not oh, this guy is, this man is doing horrible things to me. He's but obviously it's in this power dynamic. But and then with the dynamic of the other person threatening to kill them, I think that was because I think also the joining of cannibalism and homoeroticism, when I was reading in the introduction, I was I'm not familiar with this at all. I don't have any sort of social science background or anything, but that side by side comparison of the sexual homoerotic dynamic with this other white man is what's saving this person from the cannibalism at the hand of this other white person, is just being right next to each other was the first time okay, I'm gonna understand what this is about. But yeah, that's, I don't want to take up too much space, but
yeah, the relationship we're talking about between Equiano and the captain and Richard, that was a great example of how layered this this violence is, and like, yeah, that's a great. We spent like a lot of time on chapter one. Were there any particular like things that you took from chapter one involving religion?
I just wanted to add that I thought that was super interesting because when I think about San Junipero and how much people love San Junipero, and it's really like this super like toxic and like almost like damaging relationship, but it's like a queer story. So so many people like yeah. So when you brought that up, that's like what came to mind.
Yeah, and the aesthetics of it is just so like appealing. But I'm like, actually no.
Yeah.
TVH, I got the pages mixed up, and so I skipped it. I read like 80% of chapter one, and I was like, oh, I want to be able to engage with chapter two, so I started reading chapter two. So I didn't get to the religious aspect.
I guess fine. A lot of what chapter one has is also in chapter two, so
okay,
we'll probably be talking about the same thing.
Yeah, but
okay, so that's our little chapter one recap, guys. Let's sex, honor, and human consumption. Wow, this chapter starts off in hell, literally. So, anyone want to share anything from their experiences reading chapter two so far?
Well, how I felt as a reader was like I was at a bloody crime scene behind a yellow tape, wanting to see what was going on, but also covering my eyes as I was reading. Like it was a family member being brought out in a body bag, that kind of feeling. That was general tone of this chapter for me. Yeah. But also really informative. I think page 34 is a good segue to chapter 2, and then it goes into that whole ball metaphor with the Kentucky slave owner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I chapter 2 was interesting because I wanted to understand like kind of like that, like the white mind, and I feel like this was a really good chapter for that. I've been watching like people interviewing Trump supporters lately, and like so much of like what is said in here is like subtly said in everything that they, like those Trump supporter type people say, and I really thought that topics of like honor and the idea of like honor and humanness through the consumption of a Black body, but also like trying to hide that is happening too. It's like this dichotomy of like honor and dishonor and like gaining life from it. I thought it was really interesting, especially the last part was with Nat Turner. I thought it was just, a lot.
Whoa. Like, I got the sense, well, what I learned from this so far is that, do you get the idea that like starting to look like before white people like had contact with like melanated people, colored people, Black people, they were like they were like kind of empty, right? They kind of didn't have like, they didn't have their image of themselves all that, fleshed out. So when they like contacted the Black man, the Black people, they like were able to create this fantasy of this like Black beast, and then whatever that this Black beast is, they're the opposite of that, and they like kind of like created their whole society just based off this like this fantasy type stuff. That's what I am starting to believe, learn, is that the whole existence of like that white ideology exists because the opposite of that is the belief of them thinking that non-whites are like abhorrent creatures, that justifies, the existence of like this book having to be created because the actions were justified and done because of like these sick ideologies they had.
Yeah, it's like the idea that like we're the missing link for between like the ape and like the rational, logical white male who makes all his decisions like without any idea of like intuition or anything like that. And that's like the way that Black people get exoticized, but also are treated like children at the same time, which I thought was really interesting.
And the question comes to mind for me is, where is white masculinity without the Black body? Because that's also something in this chapter that's, you know, excavated.
Yeah, like what is white masculinity if not just dominating another being? Like, if like what else does white masculinity encompass besides dominating other creatures? I'm were you guys able to figure that out?
I think we can even delve a little deeper and form a dichotomy between the North and the South, white male, how they pointed the finger at each other in terms of who was more savage than the other one. Oh, cannibalism is over there. No, it's actually over there. So that's really interesting. And then there's the Quaker.
Oh yeah. Let me well, if you weren't finished, please continue. So the Quakers were a bunch of fake ass names, man. They were not with it. They were not with the shit because they were still fucking seeing Black people as like soulless beasts, and they were still letting Black people get aid and like, you know, just not even talking about it. So yeah, really disappointed in like how the Quakers turned out to be, just like most white people, you know, not trustworthy. Must look at them with suspicion because, you know, if a nigga's getting ate, they're not gonna tell you about it. That's for
sure. Yeah, that goes to show like this shit. The Quaker narrative runs so deep in the U.S. of them being so benevolent and good that when I read that, I was like, wait, what? Like they weren't actually like radical and like had good morals.
Yeah, so many like white leftists use the Quakers.
Yeah.
Like, oh, like now it's like, wow.
They're like, we've been abolitionists. I'm like, I don't.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that quote that where the guy is talking about like he's admonishing the North and their like cannibalism, and I was like, wow, you're like halfway there, but then you like are still justifying like Southern slavery, but at least he was like aware that like, you know, like the Northern capitalist states are still benefiting from this type of consumption too. I can't find. Do you guys know where that? Do you guys remember that quote? I forgot who it's from.
If you know a specific word, I can control F it because I have it on PDF. But I forget.
72, 73.
Oh, okay, 72, 73.
They're talking about the Nantucketers. Or is it a little deeper?
You know, were you talking about it's at the bottom of the page 73. It says the community at large still maintained ideas of Blacks as lacking humanity and best suited to the roles of slaves and servants to white masters. This is when I'm reflecting about like how people in Nantucket felt about Black people, which was Quaker hometown. Yeah. Geez. There's just so much to talk about in this. So I just want to talk about how even during the incident on the Peggy ship when let me just find it. I can read it. Okay, so the Peggy incident, right? They're all out in the middle of the sea, like no one's with them. But when the white people have decided that they were gonna eat the black person, and they still play that like mind game with him, thinking like having him think that okay, we're gonna draw straws, and then maybe I'm not gonna get ate. You know, they had already like known that they were gonna eat him, and they're like in the middle of the sea. And it's like probably 4 versus 1 or a whole however many over time. But that just shows that like even when the numbers are greater, there's still that fear or that fear or that insidious nature to not be like truthful with your intentions. And yeah, that's my comment right there about this Peggy incident.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too because it's like it's always like this fear. You don't really know what white people are doing or thinking behind your back. How like what are they planning behind your back? And that part was, and I think it's so interesting because I'm wondering like did they even come up with that, or was it just so ingrained in them that they just knew that they're making this fake pact, but they know ultimately that like they're gonna kill the black people first and eat them without even like talking it over, because it's just so like ingrained in the white mind that you sacrifice like black people.
Yeah, exactly. And to add to home what you're saying, I'm gonna read this quote. If these white men, isolated and stranded at sea, cannot bring themselves to claim the import and reality of black consumption, one can only imagine the depths of repression and silence within broader 19th century American culture. I'm like, goddamn, just change the last like word. Well, just change the 21st century, and like we're right on the money, because we still live in this society. We still live in this era where can't trust them. Do you trust them? 9 times out of 10, something bad's probably gonna happen. Yeah, that's how white supremacy operates.
I think the phrase rituals of democracy and fairness really captures our time right now. It reminds me of Michelle Obama's DNC speech, and how she brings up there were 2 swing states and nearly 2 votes that could have, completely altered the decision Trump being president. And I'm like, rituals of democracy. Where do we draw the line in terms of, civic engagement and like other processes like the Electoral College, rituals of democracy? Just remind me of that.
Under this guise that there's any other possible outcome, when at the end of the day there will continue to be like violence against black people, but pretending that maybe there couldn't be. It's like electoral politics right now. This is the chapter something that kind of stuck out to me that was particularly disturbing was when the author's comparing at the very, very beginning, like how the slave owner enjoyed torturing this man more than going to the ball, and like comparing like the sensuality he would have experienced with a white woman to the act of enacting violence against a black man. I was just like, holy shit, this is like, I don't know. It just trying to like contextualize that within what we see today is a lot. And that like, I don't know, pleasure and suffering. It's like hard to understand because I feel like people around me don't embody that.
Yeah, for whatever reason, white ideology, according to white ideology and white supremacist ideology, the black race is the lady of the races, according to this book. Therefore, I think it definitely made it a lot easier for them to gain pleasure from their actions with that mindset that, oh, okay, like, you know, the black race is the lady of the races. Of course, the white race is the man, powerful race. So of course, you know, me butt breaking this slave is not homo, like it's not me being a, like, you know, a rapist homosexual. It's just me dominating, me exerting my benevolent power, you know. Shit, man. You know, all right, we're gonna have to talk about it. So I'll start. Seasoning. Um. Man. Any thoughts on? Well, actually, if you like have never, if you haven't heard the term seasoning used this way before, can you share that experience of you know, going from like using that terminology for your food to learning about and how it was used to condition slaves?
Well, that whole thing was new for me. I remember the author discussing how the truth has always been in our face and that it's definition 17 in some popular dictionary, the actual definition of the historical slaves.
Right, your mic is bad right now.
Okay, I'll get closer. The author says that it's definition 17 in one of the popular dictionaries, and that truth has always been there. But the seasoning of Black youth was what was most profound to me. We see that on the slave ship that Smith was on. He was recruited by a white slave owner to work on his ship. He told him that he would make him a man and a sailor, but in reality, we see that it is Smith, the slave boy, that is making the white shipper, whatever you want to call the guy, a man. And there's a quote that I want to share. It's just to paraphrase it. It talks about how the black domination, specifically with youth, sort of encapsulates that whole white. I'll read the thing. White supremacy. Says the captain reinforces Smith's infantile state by stripping him down. But this is the part I want to get to. It's the last sentence of the paragraph on 85. Domination of the Black youth ensures the captain's supremacy. And you see that today in many instances. Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, the list is endless. So seasoning does has its contemporary parallels. And if I can just share my own personal example with seasoning.
Yeah, of course.
I thought, I graduated from high school and I knew where I was going for college. But I was seasoned in that one day after taking the AP exam, I don't know if it was econ or something like that, but it was, econ, let's say it was for econ. And I'm crossing the street to go back to school, even though we were free for the day, to turn in a notebook for extra credit. And as I'm crossing the street from the city hall where the test was taken, I was pulled over by a Black cop who chose to, exert his dominance. Negro, why aren't you in school? I'm pretty sure that they knew students were taking an AP exam because the police department is right across the street from the city hall. But after that experience, I was roughed up a little bit, put up against the car, put in handcuffs, and he took me back to school as a, quote, favor. But in reality, he was beating my Black ass. Maybe not physically, but, that psychological being was definitely happening. And so I arrived at school in handcuffs, embarrassed as all hell. And I learned, I guess, to be afraid. But then you get over it.
For the next meeting, I'm gonna like have the clip so we can hear it. But I was gonna talk about this so it starts on page 77 at the bottom, and it says so Mastodon put a chain around his leg, so he just hardly walked, and he has to work in the field that way. At night, he put another chain around his neck and fastened it to a tree. After 3 weeks, Master turned him loose, and that's the proudest nigger in the world and the hardest working nigger Master had after that. This reality reminded me of this clip from this movie called The Dam Busters, where they have a dog named Nigger, and they're just like, "Come here, nigger, sit here, nigger," and the dog is so obedient. And when I was watching that clip, I didn't see a dog in my phone. I saw a black person, I saw like a black slave, like on all fours, being bent to these white people's will. And I'm like, damn, this is the conditioning. Like, if you were like a black person, and you had like and you watch this movie, and you have family members, you could have had like a grandma who was a slave because the movie came out in the '60s. So I'm like, damn, this conditioning is like so horrible. I just really horrible. Like, just something that I experienced and related to the book I wanted to share. Also, we have the slave driver who's putting the black people in a coffin as part of their seasoning conditions. I'm like, I wonder how common this was for it to be like the trope of the vampire, to pop out of the coffin, to die and then come back. I just wonder how much of this stuff has bled into like other like just that's it.
And it would seem like the only thing that would interfere with, can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that would interfere with these barbaric practices was that earthquake that happened that shattered the shack. And it's like, does anybody else care? Is that like divine intervention? What else is it gonna take for someone to stop? That's just a thought I have.
Yeah.
That stuck out to me as well. I was like, and then how like it describes how after the earthquake everything just like went back to normal. He was like, okay, don't say anything. But like, that was what we would take.
I just want to like go back to what Ebony said about domination of the black youth ensures the captain supremacy. This is like how the world is ran, I believe. You keep the non-whites, under, constant state of the threat of being like, brutalized. And that's how you show that your white counterparts, that you guys are still on top and you guys still have the power to destroy any way you want to. And I think these slave voyages, how long they were, just gave them so much time to just learn about the human psyche and how to break the psyche. And I'm sure later chapters talks more about that. But
Yeah, I think it reverberates too into how like Black people treat their youth too.
yeah, hell yeah.
Like it, like yeah, I don't think that Black children have opportunities to. I think it's because like the parents have that fear too. So I don't know what I'm trying to say, but yeah.
Great. I can personally attest to growing up as a descendant of a slave person. Yeah, like I see Black parents beat their children like slaves, and like that's not an exaggeration. If you it's not exaggeration, and that's the slave mentality that we still have in our psyche today because the trauma of slavery was so abhorrent, and there has never been like a period of reflection, a period of healing, a period of justice, a period of anything that would alleviate the trauma of slavery. So of course you have 2020 people still, being like having the mentality of slave masters and slaves.
Yeah, and not even just like physically, but like mentally. I feel like it's so much more common for me to see Black kids at very young ages being like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, being like super, almost like hyper, like respectful of like people that are older than them. And it's like, I think it comes from that because I feel like, yeah, I can expand on it, but it's just something that I was thinking about.
It's almost like this fear. I'm thinking of like the youth that I work with and the kids, and it's I don't know if maybe one would say respect, but I think it's more of just like this fear of like the older and like their parents and stuff.
There's just like this is a sick, this like weird obsession with like this love, this obsession, this intense hate and intense desire for access to Black bodies. And like we have here on page 85 in the middle, we have Virginia, who was raised on a plantation. Never mind. Pollard, a defender of slavery, declared the Southern Negro the most lovable of creatures in his place. So yeah, we have like human beings being made into pets, and then we have regular other human beings thinking that this is like very okay behavior, and him like putting the Negro on the top pedestal of animals. Like,
Yeah, on that same page too is like it's the one where they talk about how it says the Negro is as natural, oh it's the next page, and permanent as the landscape, as aesthetically pleasing and necessary to the cultured citizen as poetry. And then like on the previous page she says like he looked like home.
yes,
I could have embraced the old uncle but was afraid of the passenger. And that is like, when I was watching those Trump supporters, I was like, this is what they long for. Like, this is the nostalgia that they like are fighting for. This idea of like having that subordinate person making you feel like you are home, like you are in, everything is in this like rightful order. And then when I was like listening to it, I was like, wow, this all makes sense because like all of this talk about patriotism and like loving your country, like that's what they see as their country. It's like their domination manifested in like subordinate people. And so it was just super, like I just like really liked that whole part because I think it's so much deeper than just like these people are racist. It's like these people are gaining meaning of life from like
literally like
comfort.
Like meaning of home. Like think about what home means to you, like the feeling you get when you've been away and then you're back, and to see that in a person that is like subservient to you. And it wasn't even a Black person that he knew, it was just someone on the train who was Black. And it's like, so that was so intense for me to like think about.
Yeah, that was a huge revelation for me because it's like, wow, like their entire fucking identity, existence, desires, wants, tasks, history, and future is based off like their connection, their parasitic connection to Black people, like parasitic connection to Black people, and it's just what, like this has to be some form of insanity that we've all been conditioned to think is normal. That's my 2 cents. And to keep adding on to that, I want to read the next page, page 86. The Negro is the institution of family and home, and simultaneously an evaporative nothing, a non-entity to the Southern white gentleman, who just as soon lynch his object of affection were the Black man to step outside of his place. And that's it, man. That's the tightrope the Negro must walk on in this world, you know. Please, master, but please them just right.
Like,
don't get on the bad side though.
Psychological terror.
That's so disturbing to think that, like, for this white man to see a Black man, that's what he would be reminded of home because of that dynamic, versus I can imagine in many situations, like a Black person, even just myself, I'm mestiza, like if I were to see another mestiza person after not for a long time, I would feel home, but like from a different lens, not as a power, but as comfort, as like, oh, like I'm safe, I'm with my people or something like this. And this white man thinks of home because of this, like, that's so disturbing. And I wonder like how many white people are comforted by the image of when they view Black people in certain depictions, and like even today, and like that makes them feel like home, versus their discomfort when they see Black people with power or like with capital or something, or and even if they think they like it in some way, like they're still more comforted by seeing Black folks like in poverty, like unwell and sickness and so.
That's a good point.
And I think too, like I think what I've been thinking lately is that it's not even like Black people having necessarily like power that frightens them. It's having autonomy and not even thinking about white people. Because like when you were saying that, I feel like all of those tropes are still around, like the mammyism that goes on now, where it's like Black women are saving us, like Black women are the ones that are voting, all the, like, you know, like we rely on Black women to do it. And it's like this idea that the Black woman isn't of service to these white people, and like they're saving them. And so even within like liberalism, there's that idea of home, like either like this subservient class of people will bring everything back to, like, you know, what
always
we think is right.
Back.
Yeah, exactly.
Will lead us to the right thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's really interesting.
I feel like if you understand like this mindset, it's easy to see Black suffering in 2020, Black suffering reminding white people of the great America that Trump is allegedly bringing in. And the threat of America, the threat of their home, is when Obama was in power, and they all started buying, all the white supremacists and white people started buying ammunition and guns. They call it the Obama effect, because a Black person gets in office, you know, the white people go buy guns and buy ammunition because they think the Black people are gonna, I don't know, take over. I don't know, but we can't take over until the system is dismantled. We don't want to take over. We just want to stop being realized. Promise, guys. But moving on, it's so interesting. I'm glad we're like connecting these dots. Really.
Yeah, and they also talk about the other part that I liked was the grandmother Black man. That part was super interesting too, because it's like the male mammy type like trope too, like and I think that it's so like ingrained in Black people to just like care about white people, like, and like care for their egos. And it's almost like you have to unlearn that and like make like, because it's like so ingrained in you. And so I think that that type of character that he talks about is really interesting.
Yeah, and we see that in every form of entertainment. You always see the non-white character saving the white character. You all and like it's so funny in these white supremacist movies. It's so rare to see a black man kill a white woman, even if white woman is a bad character, is a bad person, because that's like the white fear. The white supremacist fear is the white woman being taken by the black man and raped and killed, you know, which is, we don't have a history of doing that. White people have a history of doing that. It's you know, so I don't know where that phrase came from. It's that projection. Anyway, I digress a little. I was going to say no, I forgot. I forgot what I was going to say. I got too heated.
So I'll go off of what you and Ashley were saying, that it is so ingrained in every aspect of media, even things that are like,
oh yeah,
like, because I guess I'm starting to recognize like there's new tropes of where like the therapist is always like a black woman, and so like I'm like, okay, this is like a mammy caricature, like I can see that. And even though like the protagonist maybe is like South Asian or whatever, like not even a white, like, you know, we're getting into all these like liberal identity politics, like Netflix is so like making big steps, but really not, because the tropes are still being carried out. But even seeing that as well with like a grand, like the man version of that mammy like dynamic, also so prevalent in so many things coming out now, and like educators, principals, that is just like so comforting. And who are they mostly comforting is like non-black children, specifically white children.
like yeah, this is reminding us. So like yeah, this recent Netflix movie called Project Power. One of the main villains is this evil white chick, and Jamie Foxx, the black man. He's not allowed to kill this woman. She dies in a freak accident at the end of the movie. They did not let the black man kill this woman. I'm like, this is how she dies, really? I was so like in disbelief because of my supremacy is twisted here. It's like, wow, it cannot be more obvious, because they did not want to show the strong black man kill this white woman. I was so surprised. I was like, wow. She gets killed by this. This is what kills her. And we see, if you look at The Walking Dead, I used to love that show because of the comic. The comic is not that racist. The TV show, oh my God, how many times did I have to see a black person getting ate alive because he's saving a white chick? It's just not. It's just, and like that's why it's a very popular show on the white supremacist website. If you ever want to go down that rabbit hole, but white supremacy, all 9 areas activity, everywhere. Oh, so let's talk about another mentality that is still prevalent today. I'm just gonna read a quote and I'm gonna unpack it. So this is like context. Interviewing slaves after slavery. Um, Interviewed years after slavery, he revealed, "I know all about slavery and the war. I was right there on the spot when it all happened. I wish to goodness I was back there now, not in the war, but in slavery times. I do remember hearing about slaves on other places getting whipped sometimes. I guess niggas like that wish they was free, but I didn't want to leave my white folks ever." So, two points, you know. Um, this mentality of like, you know, being so brutalized by your captives, you know, this is a really intense version of Stockholm syndrome, paired with like, you know, after slavery, I am sure if you fucking were like a house Negro or you had like a good slave role, I'm sure, you know, living under a good master was probably better off than living in whatever shack the government probably gave to you after slavery, you know? Because I doubt people were given like any form of decent housing, decent avenues to prosper after slavery. And no one ever got those 40 acres or those mules. So I feel like this makes really sense. Very tragic, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it sounds like like almost like Black conservatives today, like that believe that like yeah, it's not that bad type of mentality. It still persists, and it's interesting because that actually is more of the narrative in the general public than like anything in this book is, which is really sad. But like I know like it's very common to hear people say that, even people who are Black or people who try, or like POCs who try to discount what Black Americans went through during slavery, is to kind of say like, well, we all went through this, or what, or some, we all like this all happened to all of us, or something, and that there's nothing special, that like, you know, like your suffering is not special, in a way to like discount what they think is real. Like as an African person, like I've experienced people saying that a lot, and I think it's I'm always wondering like how smart are these people, like in terms of like the white people who set up these structures or are aware of these structures, like are they intentionally like pitting like people against each other with these ideologies, knowing that there's going to be a group who has just a little bit more in one way, who will like, you know, we're like, it's always like this type of infighting. And I think it's super deliberate and set up that way, because I see it in every aspect of anyone who has power, even a little bit. So
Yes, yes, 100%. The white supremacists' entire game is subjugation and confusion. Subjugation and confusion. And confusion causes conflict, and you know, it just everything just. I say the definition we use for racism white supremacy is white people dedicated to subjugating. Actually, let me find. Actually, no.
Is it early death?
Mm-hmm.
It's by. Is it the definition by Ruth, the abolitionist?
No, but it's on our YouTube page. I have definitions. Those are, you should learn both those definitions, because those are definitions that we use, and that when we're talking about white supremacy, that's what we're talking. But yeah. Once you understand that, nothing will confuse you. Besides why they're so sick, like I don't know. I can do anything in this book ever. Like, I wonder, is it gonna talk about later on, like once like the white people started improving their firearms? I wonder if it's gonna talk about that. So I'm so interested into learning how like they just got really happy with the new guns and just look for any reason to shoot you, bro. Can you guys come up with any like any logical reason like as to why a person would gain pleasure from like maiming people, like cutting flesh, searing flesh? Do you guys know, like, can you guys have any like ideas where this stems from? I don't.
One thing that does come to mind for me is hunting. You know, the thrill of that.
Oh, yes.
Catching a deer or mongoose and skinning it, and you know, the whole process, prepping it and eating it. That's the closest thing that I can think of in regards to that.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, white people do love a good hunt. For sure, they love a good hunt. Yeah, look at the Aubrey, the black man who was murdered by he was running from people and they shot him down. You guys know what I'm talking about, right?
In Georgia.
Aubrey.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of people compare like Black Death to like fox hunting because the thrill that comes with that. You know, most of the time the fox is already captured. You know, the fox is already dead, but the fox doesn't know that. So they chase the fox for fun, hunt it down, kill it, and then they go to the lodge, have a drink, and yeah, it was fun hunting that nigger down. Real fun.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And the social esteem that comes with it by having a deer head hung in your cigar or whatever. I'm talking about it with your white supremacist friends. I caught that nigger today. You know, that parallel.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're gonna get all into. I'm sure we're gonna get all into that when we learn more about lynching and how motherfuckers were taking testicles as trophies. You know, yeah, let's hang on top of the balls off. I want them in a jar. I think it'll be a nice present for Betsy. You know, Betsy will love it on her cupboard.
Ebony, what you said like really just reminded me like the spectacle of hunting, and just it's like almost, I don't know, like the homoeroticism of that, of just like men being like, they're not just like going to kill an animal because they need to eat. It's like they're gonna hunt this deer with like a $5,000 gun and all this like hunting gear and like take all these pictures, and it's like I don't know, this like grand event. Like it's so sick. It's not like the same as people like living off of the land, right? And like in like balance with the land and like with animals, and that it's just like this perversion. But the reality obviously is like no person needs to do that to another person, and so that's why it's even like more disgusting and like perplexing, like because yeah, like hunting is the closest thing I can think of like someone being like, oh, like that was so like, I don't know, I can't even like imagine hunting an animal. But
that
just
was so
like
thrilling.
Yeah, that was exactly that was so thrilling. Wow. But but then just even that to something close to this sort of violence is like the gap is too big. Like I can't wrap my head up.
I don't know if I brought this up last week, but never forget Katrina. White people drove from different states to hunt black people in New Orleans. Drove from other states, fully armed, to hunt black people down. Over 1,000 people died during Katrina. But what are people talking about during Katrina? Looting. Black people looting and raping babies in a stadium. I remember that for sure. I was like, stadium, Superdome, what's going on over there? Raping.
And it's anarchy. Black people are free.
People are driving down to hunt niggers, according to them. And then like someone just said, yeah, talking to their friends about it. Literally telling like.
Yeah, there's like this video too in June after people were looting during the uprisings, and in LA, I think there's like I think there's like a Mexican gang, and they're all just like getting ready, and they're like, we're gonna protect our hood against these like black people looting. And they all get ready to like fight them and shoot them. And I think there was like cops that said like, just let them shoot each other or something. Like there's a recording of that. And like that so reminds me of a hunt and how everyone gets involved in the hunt. And it's just like the lynching too, like just like rally everyone for the spectacle of like the hunt. And people were so like the moment that property was like damaged, people were getting like deputized, like white people and things like that, like to get ready to just like shoot and hunt and kill. And it's not even, I don't even think that people care about property damage. I think people are just using an excuse to like want to harm like Black people and poor people, especially Black poor people. So I thought that was really interesting.
I wonder how many lifelong bonds have been formed around, you know, a Black dead body. Like, what comes to mind for me is the camaraderie, the technique, all the way from the beginning of shining your gun, picking out the gun to shooting it. It's a cultural, like, practice. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, the gun is considered like, it's called the great equalizer. And it's actually, it's seen as like the white man's penis, you know? Like that's where all the white man's power comes from. It's the gun. This is according to Dr. Welsing, who wrote the ISIS papers, which is like the book that like breaks down white supremacy. I can't wait to get that book. But yeah, the culture of the gun is just the extension of white supremacy. They're like,
yeah, because that's like the whole reason that the slave trade even happened, because white people were trying to invade Africa for a long time, and it wasn't until they had like ammunition. People think that it happened easily, but it did not. Like it was a lot of work for white people to do it, and until like they had guns. So like guns literally are like a symbol of like white supremacy, because they were able to like
the gun maintains the power of the white man while genociding Black bodies. You know, that's the great equalizer. Because anybody with a gun can kill a Black person. You know how white people view the Black body as a strong beast. That's what they call the gun a great equalizer. You know, a gun can kill any monster, according to them. So.
And that also adds like more context when you think about the perception of the Black man as like the beast that is like when that guy who killed Mike Brown was saying like he was like a demon or possessed or
superhuman.
So it really is like to them the great equalizer, because they see like Black people as people, not people that they can fight, just like these large menacing beasts.
Yeah, and no matter the age, they will perceive a Black person as a threat, no matter the age. You know, Tamir Rice speaks for himself, and the treatment of Black slaves, Black children during the antebellum, like, you know, it's all here. White people have no humanity. Hey, it's all here. So.
If the gun is a symbol for white supremacy, is it pure like audacity or audaciousness or whatever the word, the form that symbolize Black power? I think Nat Turner is a good example of that audacity. No guns, just nigga power.
That has to be like a quote. I want a shirt that says that.
I'll make that a clip. I'll be the first clip on our Instagram page.
It's pretty amazing.
Oh, that's a good one. But yeah, maybe that's a good segue into how Nat Turner fought the good fight. And I just learning about the like insurrection, I was just like, fuck. The aftermath of it, like how the innocent slaves were just brutalized because of like that really fucked me up. Like, damn, these people don't even know what's going on, you know, because not everyone's you know, not everyone can be involved in a revolution, you know, it's not for everybody. So you have these innocent slaves just trying to be a good slave. Next thing you know, they're getting fucking captivated because Nat Turner is doing his own thing. I'm just like, white people suck. White supremacists suck more though. Jeez, man.
I thought it was like interesting too how he talks about how the Black people didn't use castor oil for so long as like a little act of like solidarity, which I thought was really cool. Because if you actually think about it, like people really do tell you to use castor oil for like everything, and it must have been even more ingrained back then. So to like go without it was probably a huge sacrifice.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was really interesting because it's always like projected that we are the cannibals.
Yeah, Nat's body was boiled up, his oil saved and sold for a long period as panacea for all ills and known as Nat's grease. Come on down to Tim's Tim's elixirs and get some Nat grease. Fuck. And like white people, like, listen to this. Unspoken codes of honor and vengeance drove whites to quarter, burn, maim, and behead blacks whom they saw as having violated the sacred promises of white masculinity, white family, and the innocence embodied in murdered white babies. So they care so much about like these quote unquote white babies, but you know they're all I don't have a just the whole white identity is full of hypocrisy. It's just this huge amalgamation of like hypocrisies and just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that these people operate this way. Yeah, it has to be like the white supremacists who are like running the show and have all the other white people on whatever frequency you want to call them to be on. Geniuses, absolute geniuses. Because no system has been successful ever in the history of like that we know of. Unless you guys correct me if I'm wrong, please.
I couldn't imagine walking into a haberdashery and them having a bottle of Nat Turner just in the display. Like, they talk about medicinal cannibalism, but what do they get from that? I'm so curious. What do y'all think about that? What do they get from that?
Well, just in terms of the universe, like everything is energy. So like, you know, they probably got energy in the form of like, you know, I'm ingesting this nigger who had the audacity to actually kill us, to actually fight and want a life not full of misery and hardship. What the fuck was he thinking? Now I'm eating his ass. I don't know. That
Still, that's like next level though. Like as punishment, as to strike down that idea, to go to the, I mean, just like of consuming like the remnants. That is, I don't know. Like it doesn't even, that's the thing, is like so many of these things contradict each other, like their beliefs. They're like, they have certain views of like Nat Turner, but then like if they really thought that, why would they ingest anything of his remnants? Like, but it's, I don't know, it's sick. Like it always comes back to power. And even like the punishment, that makes me think of just like anytime there's any sort of uprising or or like change or like standing up to some sort of empire or something, it's the backlash that they use, like the violence they did on everyone else who wasn't even involved with the uprising, to prevent it from ever happening again. Like just that fear and like that memory of the fear they know is like more powerful than of actually stopping like change from happening. That was a digression, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I think white people do a really good job of like hiding behind laws and policy, which also probably made it a lot easier to like do this shit. You know, because if a law says it's illegal for you to own a person, then yeah, you're gonna be able to convince yourself that it's not bad, it's legal. It's legal. White people love saying that's legal or illegal. So I think if we look at all the horrible like policies that have existed throughout like, you know, history, we'll clearly be able to see that white people will create the most like inhumane Jim Crow laws, follow them like they're doing something good. You know, I'm not breaking the laws, niggas shouldn't be here. It's whites only. I'm not breaking the laws, niggers shouldn't be here. Like what? Yeah, so you're a good person for obeying a law that causes suffering and misery. That's the ideology. And I love to see it. I love to understand it.
I think it's interesting too, because it's like, well, I guess like for white people, they're not human, right? They're just like products, objects. So it's almost like something that, like, if you think of in their mind, like Nat Turner as something that is like a product that is like malfunctioning. And now you've like turned it into something else that is beneficial for you.
Wow.
So like you've taken it from, you know, like it's almost like they think that it's is it called ingenuity or something?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it's
fuck.
like you fix something.
Yeah, you repurpose like
yeah, you repurposed it, right? So that's what I was thinking.
Dark.
I mean, on one hand, it's also obviously like retribution and like revenge, but it's also like the idea of like taking something that's broken to them.
Yeah. That also could be one of the earlier forms of like the kind of modification of death. You know? Oh, jeez. Okay, so I want to talk about this dispensatory that they have, page 92. I'm just gonna read. It says Reverend Edward Taylor was a New England practitioner whose dispensatory included remedies made from human blood, heart, flesh, and other parts of the human body meant to be took or ingested. And this practice, which Taylor brought over from England, the body parts were usually obtained from criminals hanged for various crimes. It was commonly thought that the best parts came from artificial mummies who had died a violent death. Not surprisingly, one cannot readily find such information in general inventories of medical supplies in the early American colonies or within the contents list of apocrisies. Ah, man, so crazy. I used to be able to go back into a shop and like buy some stuff with human parts. Big Pharma has changed.
Wait, so I have a question. Like, do you guys think that there's any type of consumption that could ever be like loving, or is that like weird? Like, yeah.
No, that's a good question. I mean, also comes up in a lot of, I feel like, different forms of media.
Yeah.
Like people like have eaten like their like loved ones like ashes. Like I've like like seeing that, or the closest thing is like when people eat their own like placentas or something.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
But this is, I don't know.
I mean, I don't think that.
Right. Yeah. No, but like, if
like
there's like
institutionalized, like,
right. Yeah.
There's also giving blood at the Red Cross, but I don't think the underlying, function is pleasure. It's health, but it's your pleasure. I don't know. Maybe the placenta eating. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says for at least 2 generations, the entire Southampton Black community stopped using castor oil. Damn.
Wow.
Yeah. The whole like Nat Turner backlash is it's so interesting. Like, yeah, because it's so interesting juxtaposed to like who are the Black people that are like accepted, like our accepted heroes that they give us, you know, versus like someone like Nat Turner who like they don't even talk about. Like I think they said that like one of the houses they put like this is the last house that he went to, like it was like almost like this white victimhood of like this is the last place he violated and stuff. And I think that's really interesting to think about. Like who are we allowed to take from, and like who are like like a part of like or the Black tradition that we can have versus the ones that we're not allowed to have because they like take away that history from us.
For me, what you just said brings up this question of what do historically silence people? How do they usually speak? And the answer that comes to mind is through passed down behaviors. And just for the sake of them not using castor oil speaks to a certain truth that can't fully be articulated in the text because, as you said, the history wrote itself in, you know, with the oppressor's pen. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. And we don't even have the details about Nat Turner. We don't have a kill count. We don't have if he actually fucking killed babies. We don't have shit. We just have what they did to him afterwards. And I'm just so fucking like, what? White people are really a hot mess. White supremacists got white people messed the fuck up. Yeah.
Actually, like what you said, like what the even like the figures that we are taught about now, they're what they did is totally manipulated. Like even in the ways, like if there is any radical thought at all that is, they just like totally water it down. I mean, most recently, obviously, with like any activist from the 60s. Like,
yeah.
They get militant. It's like, no. Like just, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so so no one, and that just is like so powerful in making people think that's just like not even a possibility, in making all non-white people just like more like liberal and centrist rather than like.
I think this book is echoing the reality that white people are just becoming comfortable with the idea that other bodies can think, you know, are capable of thought, are capable of agency. This is why we like, you know, when Smith, the slave boy on the ship, he was punished for quote unquote daring to think, you know. So, you know, back in the slave time, you know, you do what you're told, you know, that's it, you know, do what you're told, you know. And I'm sure some of us can see that mentality from our parents who, like, when we were growing up, they just expected us to just do whatever they said with no question, comment, or nothing, just, you know, be a little slave. And it's still here.
Yeah, that whole section was a lot. Like, it was a lot. It's interesting too, because like, I feel like I'm not really sure what I'm trying to say, but I feel like when you see a lot of slave movies too, you see like the master being abusive, but not as like sadistically as like that part was, like setting him up so that you can torture him, right? Because it's like he obviously can't cook the fish, and you know that, but it's like you want to be angry at him versus like I feel like sometimes in movies it'll be like, oh, I'm so tired, I can't work anymore, and then that's like when the master like gets mad.
Yeah.
But this is like, no, like he wanted a reason to like exert like power over him, which I don't feel like I've seen before. I usually see it as in another way.
Yeah, I remember I was watching 12 Years a Slave, and like me seeing the Brad Pitt character, who was like a good Christian or whatever the fuck role he plays in that movie. But me seeing his character gave me relief. I'm like, okay, a good fucking white person, finally. But the reality of the situation was that for the slave era, it was very few relief for those slaves. Like there was no Brad Pitt coming to the plantation to save them. If anything, they was coming to the plantation to, use them for their own gain, their own sexual pleasure, their own labor, to rent them out for whatever. Damn.
Yeah.
It's a fantasy for both,
Yeah.
like current white and black and non-black people.
It also feels that continued thirst to experience and witness black suffering, because all these fucking slave movies, black suffering, sweaty nigga getting their ass beat, barely any clothes on. That's what you're gonna see in this movie. That's what they love seeing, black suffering. I just want to talk about Project Power again, because at the very beginning of that movie, we have Jamie Foxx, like, it's a very scary scene. He kidnaps this black woman, and it was in the scariest way ever. They eventually become friends though, but it's just like that fear of being kidnapped by a black man in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. It's in this movie now, and people are gonna see it and be like, oh, that could happen to me, It's gonna continue like this disturbed racial thinking, racist thinking that white supremacy produces. I think it's only safe to watch the movies if you understand that you live in a white supremacist society. Therefore, you have to watch the movies with this lens, or you're really gonna be conditioned to be an idiota.
Yeah, you can internalize some really fucked up shit. That reminds me, did any of y'all see like the Umbrella Academy? Okay, it was like they have one black character who is just so powerful, but it's just if you ever watch it, it like reminds me of that. It's like if you have a critical lens, you can see that the way they're writing her, she doesn't use her power basically. She like withholds because it's too much. She can basically just control people. Like she'll be like, do what I say, and she goes back in time to the civil rights movement in the South, and I'm like, okay, she could literally just tell all these millions of people what to do, but she's like, no, like we have to do like actions and like sit-ins, and I'm just like, what?
Conditions us to not use our power, to not use our voice, to not think, to not do anything but submit to the rule of like supremacy.
That's like how you were talking about in The Walking Dead, how Michonne is like a swordsmith or something, and like but she's out here taking care of this white baby. Like,
oh my God. And like whenever like I want to talk about Terminator, because like in the movie Terminator, like the machines are supposed to be the black people. It's supposed to represent like the black fear of like, oh, the black people are gonna eventually like get all the power and start killing us. So this is why movie Terminator, insanely racist. Actually, any movie where like you see machines or you see like
zombies,
non-white people, or even sometimes the white people are supposed to be the black people, because white supremacists know that they make these movies for them. They make them for themselves. So when we see like I was telling Ash, I was telling you about the movie Robots. Who's seen the movie Robots? That CGI movie?
iRobot? The Will Smith one?
Similar. iRobot is the same thing, Like if you think about iRobot is literally about this black guy who he's suspicious of these robots who are gonna like start this rebellion type thing, and robots are like the second class citizens in that movie. But the robots actually do a rebellion, which is like, oh, the white fear is actually gonna happen. Black people are actually gonna do something, which reinforces the white fear and reinforces the white supremacy, white supremacy. You guys know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's like when the people that are in the permanent underclass are like aware, and then when they're aware and they like organize, that's like the biggest fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would seem that the pendulum falls once this level of self-actualization occurs. And we see that in the Umbrella Academy, how she chooses humility over, her own power. All she has to whisper is, I heard a rumor.
Literally.
I heard a rumor that white supremacy was over.
Yeah. But yeah, it seems
like end movie. That's it. That couldn't happen. Yeah.
I wonder why. Like, it has to be because the people who write these things can't even. I don't even think it's like they're malicious. It's like they can't even imagine.
Yeah, they can't fathom that
that
would actually be liberation.
Yeah,
like
that like a Black person would want to do that. Like,
Yeah, and just slavery created this trauma bond that we're still in with like us, and we're all victims of white supremacy, and we're still bonded to our masters, the white supremacists, until we're out of this fucking system. So yeah, it's sick, man. We're still being fed upon by white supremacists and still being consumed.
I have to head out in 5 minutes, but just heads up. But I'm excited to read the next chapter. And this is like very, I don't know. This is like really important to read.
Yeah, talk about this book and this book club as much as possible, Get people aware about white supremacy and racism. So definitions that on our YouTube page, Sarah, you have to learn those. And
okay, I will.
Right?
Memorize them, I promise. Yeah, since I've moved to Cleveland, I'm living in Cleveland, Ohio. This is where Tamir Rice was murdered.
Oh,
yeah, and so I've gotten involved with the mutual aid orgs and like organizing here, and it's very interesting to be in a town or in a city. There's only like 300,000 people, but much smaller. But then everything, just like in organizing and like everyone knows each other, and like a lot of people. I don't know. Like Tamir's mom is like very big, and it is very active. But it's so fucked up. I feel like, I don't know, I grew up in Houston, and a lot of times in those, like a city like Houston, there's 7 million people. It's just like so abstract and like so distant. But here it's just like, I like went to go through I went to ceramics class, and it was at the park where he was killed. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like this still exists. Like how has this whole place like not been burnt down or something? But because there were like really horrible race riots really close to where I live here, like the whole Black population, similar to Detroit, is like still suffering.
Yeah, and when you say race riot, do you mean white people killing Black people indiscriminately?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're called the Huff riots, and it was like this prospering Black community that is really close to where I live, which is very close to the university I'm at right now. And then, I mean, that's the thing, it's like there's not even that much like history like available. I tried to research it, and I'm still like in the process of doing that. But then like basically like the backlash from the police and from the National Guard, like in the violence they enacted on the Black community, like never recovered ever, like no semblance of that. And even like within the Black community here, it's like seems like a very neo-lib, like there's like no sort of accountability from the government. They're like, we need to like fix this town or like this community. I'm like, this is like a site of incredible violence, like holy shit, like the city needs to do something. But
yeah, there's more evident that the white psyche is so detached from humanity. Like no, like I'm starting to not believe that some white people can love their children. Like, I don't think a lot of these slavers love their children. I don't think that it was possible. Like, and I think that is another reason why we have so many like people just being born into this world just super not human anymore, because of just 600 years of just violence, rape, no accountability, wealth, power, total control over the planet, and that has to be something sick to the mind. You know, but that power should not go to people who use that power to be sadistic. You know, and I just don't think it's in non-white people nature to be this cruel or to be violent. I think it's all everything we know has been taught by our masters, by the majority of things we know, at least. Evan, last week, we talked about Christianity, and you said you're gonna think about your answer a little bit longer. Were you able to do that?
Yes. I think, long story short, what I'm doing in terms of my own spiritual path, it just works for me. And I'm always questioning. And so that's a good position to be in. And that's that, really. Yeah.
It was so nice to meet you every day. We'll see y'all next week. If this will keep happening, and we'll read chapter 3.
Yeah, we'll be Friday or Saturday, y'all.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah, Fridays. Yeah, either works for me. I just have to know ahead of time. Okay, awesome. Thank you all. Bye.
Peace out, Sarah.
Bye.
Welcome to the club. Oh, bye. Yeah. So yeah, I'm really thinking like how much like Frankenstein, vampires, how much of this just stems from slavery and like the access to Black bodies and being able to experiment on live subjects. Like how much of this stuff comes from the reality of Black suffering? I feel like a large majority of it. Right, and remember, look at this. This is a fucking heart right here. This instrument that was probably used to torture, measure Black people in some capacity has been made to symbolize love and affection in our fucking world. This is not a coincidence. This is a slap in the fucking face. It has to be. Like,
I didn't see that before.
Like, so once you find out what this device was used for, it can't be good. It can't be good. But what I do know is that this is a heart, and a heart is supposed to symbolize love and affection. There's no love and affection during slavery at all.
Well, I mean, I think that's what the book is like teaching us, is that they garner love and affection from those acts. Like that is what they see as love and affection.
Yeah, no.
So it's like a whole different. I grapple with like, it's hard for me to say like, is this a part of white people's nature, or if it's like who they are in terms of like I don't know, like genetically or something. Yeah. Because I think it like I for me it takes away a lot of capacity to like envision something better. Like, but then I don't know what else or how else to describe a group of people from like one country who have pretty much colonized almost every other country and like, you know, taken their resources in some way, shape, or form, and who now have, you know, societal structures that are pretty much mirror images of these Western countries. Like, it's hard for me to grasp really the amount of power white supremacy has, and also like how like where it comes from and how to see a society different from that, because so much of what we do, we're so not in touch with like what we do outside of white supremacy. And that's coming from someone who lives in like Ghana or who's from Ghana. But even there has so much of that in it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm just really excited to get the ISIS papers because she does a really good job of breaking down the history behind white supremacy and she talks about old white tribes who literally like these old ass fucking ancient tribes were still anti-black. They have like ideology already surrounding like the dark people are bad for some reason. So I just want to can't wait to get that book because I just feels like it's a must read if you want to understand like the complexity of white supremacy and where it comes from, how it manifests, and all 9 areas of activity. So
in terms of that question for me, it comes down to, in terms of dismantling white supremacy, interaction by interaction. For me, I've consumed or white supremacy with a certain level of self-abnegation. And so for me, it means to not, deny myself so much. That's my own sort of sword in terms of how to deal with that monstrosity.
Yeah.
it's like I don't know, just being aware that only trust white people who are proving themselves to be trustworthy. Like I have like very few white people in my life, which is like not by accident. For my safety, actually, my safety and my family safety.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because a lot of people talk about Bacon's Rebellion and like how like it was like the big like. Do you guys know about Bacon's Rebellion? Yeah.
I can't. It's hard for me to hear you.
Oh, sorry. I said everyone. Can you hear me now? Better?
Little.
Okay, like a lot of people know about Bacon's Rebellion and they cite it as like, like the big like multiracial like organizing that like because it was I think it was like in the 1600s, this white guy got a bunch of like slaves and indentured servants to have a rebellion basically because it was a rebellion based on getting rid of indigenous people or taking their land or something like that. But they like burned a bunch of slave owners' lands and things like that. And like people see Nathaniel Bacon, which is the white guy. People say that after Bacon's Rebellion was when the white masters were much more cognizant about making sure that Black people and white indentured servants were like separated, and that they treated white indentured servants slightly better, which is like the white wage, which is like the psychological wage of knowing that you're white even though you're poor. That is like the extra benefit. And I think it's really interesting because he was totally just like a middle class guy who took advantage of a lot of these people in very vulnerable positions just because he wanted to own land. But a lot of people switch it around to show it as an example of multiracial work or organizing. And I just think it's interesting because even the examples we have are still like white people manipulating us. That makes sense. It's not as genuine. And I'm sure there are examples, but I can't think of that many of like white people really putting themselves on the line. Because if you do that, you have to really dismantle like a lot in terms of like your economic privilege, the people around you who are constantly perpetuating white supremacy. I think it's really complicated.
So I'm really excited to further the understanding of white pathology it's really important to coming up with solutions to this nightmare that we call planet Earth. Um,
Yeah.
Shout out to Vincent Woodard.
I guess, should we just over like final thoughts or something? Or do you guys want to keep going? What's the mood?
Do you guys have any final thoughts?
Um,
I think this was a good discussion. I really got to get out a lot of negative emotions surrounding the reality in history. Um, yeah, I have a much clearer vision of slavery. My understanding of slavery prior to this book was insulting to the people who experience it, and insulting to myself because I've always loved history, but the white man's always given me bullshit, you know, and have some agency so I can, find some knowledge myself. But what about you guys? I don't know.
I have empathy for, this sounds really silly, but slaves at a level that I didn't have before. I feel a certain connectedness to the acts acted upon them now at a greater level that I hadn't really even touched, or just like psychologically. And I want to be able to read the book and to be able to have that certain empathy for myself and be able to like check in, like is this a good time to read this book? Because I usually read it in like one setting. I need to be a little more aware of what that can do.
I feel like you're setting yourself up for like a lot of trauma.
Yeah. Maybe let's space it out. Let's have 10 pages here, 10 pages there. But at the same time, it's like eating a flavor that you haven't eaten before and just wanting more. But it also gives you like this weird heartburn. So yeah, I'm learning how to deal with that.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys both said. I think I feel the same way about learning, like not learning, but I think it's really easy to talk about slavery and not really understand that these are like people and societies and groups that are like I feel like when I'm reading, especially what happened to Smith, something like it just really affected me. And I think I could almost like see him like on the boat, like wanting to just die and then just like jumping off, and then like the master having, or like that guy having so much joy seeing him need him because he realized he wanted to be saved or something. Like it's just so, like I feel like images like that need to be the collective conscious of everyone. Like everyone needs to see these, or like, you know what I'm not like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm just like, I just really enjoyed this chapter a lot because I feel like I learned a lot from it, and I thought it was really good because it showed like the cannibalism socially, but also like the one-on-one type of cannibalism that happens too. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I especially liked the part about the differences that the North and South saw within each other that weren't actually differences. And I really liked just showing the different roles that different slaves made for themselves to try and like maneuver through this really horrible system. So yeah, I'm excited for the next chapter for sure.
Evelyn, have you heard of the book called Medical Apartheid? Apartheid?
What's the first word?
Medical.
Medical. No, I haven't.
I started the audiobook of that, and it's worse. It's actually worse than this book. Yeah. But yeah, yeah, it's just the damage to the psyche that
It goes through like the medical history of experimentation on Black people in America, starting from even before slavery to now, which it's still going on. Yeah, it's super exhaustive. Like it goes through everything. Like how all the skeletons in classrooms, those are Black people. Like I never knew that before. Things like that. Yeah.
It's relevant given the vaccine talks.
Yeah, it's very real. It's very relevant. Yeah, I'm sure we'll read it in our book clubs. Sure. Well, and I'm excited to keep reading. I'm excited to find out what this device is. Yeah, if we don't any final thoughts. I think I hope we do a checkout question. Hope we check out,
Yeah.
And the checkout question is like your roles, something good going on, or something that you're looking for in your dorm, something like negative you're having to deal with, you're trying to get rid of.
And your bud, like what you're excited for.
Yeah, in your bud. So 2 roses.
It's not a rose yet, that's the point.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll go first. My rose is like developing like my toolbox like to counter racism white supremacy. And my bud is getting more tools to accomplish this, life mission. And my thorn is the heat. I hate the heat right now. That's my thorn right now.
Snaps.
My rose is hanging out with my daughter. It's always fun. My thorn, my horrible, disgusting landlord and property manager who are consistently annoying me and reminding me why we need a revolution. And my bud is I guess honestly reading the next chapter. So yeah.
Okay, so it's rose, thorn, and a bud. Okay, and okay, so a rose that I have are my daily or semi-daily walks, where I just think about, reflect on the book and other things. And I try to make it a happy time. for the most part, counting the butterflies. I've seen a red bird today versus a blue bird yesterday. That kind of thing. Just being really in tune with my environment. A bud would be, I'm not quite sure what that means just yet.
Oh, okay.
What does that mean? Can you go over that?
Just something that you're excited for, like a potential rose, a rose in the future.
Having like the fallopian tubes to be able to express myself more fully, given the language in the book, just about my experience as a Black woman in America. Yeah, that's a bud. A thorn is, I have to have a hard conversation with someone, my mentor, and hopefully it'll end nicely. I feel like I've grown, and there are just some things that need to be communicated. So hopefully this will go over nicely. I know it's all about, how I'm feeling as I'm delivering it, not so much about the words, so I'm going to be mindful about that. Did I say that was my thorn? It kind of is my thorn. It's been taking up a lot of space in my head. So that kind of conversation is going to happen this afternoon, and then hopefully, it'll turn into a rose.
I'm sure it will.
All right.
Alright,
I'm going to head out.
Yeah, I'll see you next week. You guys can share the video when I post it on the YouTube.
Okay. Nice talking to you both.
Nice talking to you. Everyone. You guys are the best. Counting White Supremacy, Racism all the time, 647.
See you guys next week.
Oh.
So,